The moment that sent shockwaves through morning television began like any other carefully scripted celebrity interview, with Gwen Stefani smiling under the bright studio lights, greeting hosts, and promoting positivity. But behind the polished surface, tension was quietly building. According to multiple online reports and audience reactions, what was expected to be a routine appearance on the Today Show slowly transformed into an uncomfortable exchange that no one anticipated. Viewers later claimed the questions felt unusually pointed, drifting away from music and fashion into deeply personal territory. Gwen's body language reportedly shifted, her smiles growing tighter, her pauses longer, as the atmosphere in the studio subtly but unmistakably changed. Sources close to the production later suggested that the interview had been pre-approved, as is standard for high-profile guests, which made the alleged turn of events even more surprising. Gwen Stefani, known for her professionalism and years of media experience, appeared caught off guard by questions that some fans described as dismissive of her artistic evolution. Online commentators speculated that references to her age, changing musical relevance, and personal life crossed an unspoken line. While nothing overtly explosive happened on air at first, viewers with a keen eye noticed Gwen adjusting in her chair, glancing off camera, and responding with noticeably shorter answers. As the interview progressed, the tone reportedly became more awkward. Questions that seemed harmless on paper allegedly carried an edge when delivered live, especially those comparing Gwen's current work to her earlier No Doubt era. Fans later argued that the framing implied she was living in the shadow of her past success. Gwen responded calmly, but her words sounded carefully measured, as though she were choosing diplomacy over confrontation. Social media users later dissected every second, pointing out subtle sighs and forced laughter that suggested growing frustration beneath her composed exterior. The tension reached a new level when the conversation allegedly shifted toward her marriage and blended family. While Gwen has spoken openly about her personal life in the past, viewers felt the questions were phrased in a way that invited judgment rather than understanding. Her answers reportedly became more guarded, and the warmth she initially displayed seemed to fade. According to audience reactions, this was the point where the studio energy noticeably dipped, creating an uncomfortable silence between questions that felt heavier than anything said aloud. Behind the scenes, rumors began circulating almost immediately after the broadcast segment ended. Crew members, speaking anonymously in online forums, claimed there was visible confusion among staff as Gwen appeared displeased. While these accounts remain unverified, they fueled speculation that something had gone wrong beyond what viewers saw on television. Gwen allegedly leaned toward the producer during a commercial break, her expression serious, before straightening up and preparing to continue. What happened next would become the focal point of intense online debate. When the cameras returned, Gwen reportedly answered one final question before pausing. According to viewers, she smiled politely, thanked the hosts, and then stood up unexpectedly. The move appeared unscripted, and for a brief moment, the hosts seemed unsure how to respond. Gwen allegedly removed her microphone and walked off the set, leaving behind stunned expressions and a studio audience that didn't quite know how to react. The broadcast quickly cut away, transitioning to another segment as if nothing unusual had occurred. Within minutes, clips of the moment began circulating online, sparking fierce discussion. Some viewers applauded Gwen for setting boundaries, interpreting her exit as a powerful statement against what they perceived as disrespect. Others questioned whether the situation had been exaggerated, suggesting technical issues or timing conflicts could explain her departure. Still, the narrative of a walk-off gained momentum, fueled by slowed-down footage, speculative captions, and dramatic commentary across multiple platforms. Entertainment analysts weighed in, noting that live television thrives on controlled unpredictability, but rarely does a guest of Gwen Stefani's stature leave mid-interview. They pointed out her decades-long career, during which she has navigated countless interviews without incident. This context made the alleged humiliation narrative more compelling to fans, who argued that it would take something genuinely uncomfortable to push her to that point. The lack of an immediate official explanation only added to the mystery surrounding the incident. The Today Show's silence in the hours following the broadcast further intensified speculation. Viewers expected a clarification or statement, but none came right away. This vacuum allowed theories to flourish, ranging from miscommunication about interview topics to deeper issues involving editorial decisions. Once fans flooded comment sections, demanding accountability and respect, while critics urged caution, reminding everyone that viral clips often lack full context. Gwen Stefani herself remained quiet initially, a move some interpreted as strategic restraint. Public relations experts suggested that staying silent can sometimes prevent a story from growing. But in the age of social media, silence often speaks louder than words. As hours turned into a full news cycle, hashtags related to her name began trending, with fans sharing personal stories of feeling dismissed or talked down to, drawing parallels to what they believed Gwen experienced on live television. Industry insiders later speculated that the interview may have touched on sensitive contractual or branding issues. Gwen's career spans music, fashion, television, and entrepreneurship, making her public image carefully managed. Any implication that undermines that image could understandably cause friction. While none of these claims were confirmed, they painted a picture of a situation where multiple unseen factors may have contributed to a breaking point rather than a single offensive question. Media critics also analyzed the role of morning shows in shaping celebrity narratives. These programs walk a fine line between relatability and sensationalism, often pushing for candid moments that generate headlines. In Gwen's case, some argued that the pursuit of a viral moment may have backfired. What was intended as edgy or probing allegedly came across as disrespectful, particularly to a guest who has spent years redefining herself on her own terms. As the story spread internationally, global fans weighed in with cultural perspectives on respect and professionalism. Many noted that Gwen's calm exit, if intentional, contrasted sharply with more dramatic walk-offs seen in the past. There was no shouting, no visible anger, just a quiet removal from an environment she may have felt no longer served her. This restraint, supporters argued, spoke volumes about her character and boundaries. Others, however, urged viewers to consider alternative explanations. Live broadcasts are complex productions, and unexpected exits can result from timing overruns, health concerns, or backstage cues gone wrong. Without official confirmation, these voices cautioned against framing the incident as humiliation. Still, the emotional response from fans suggested that, regardless of intent, the moment resonated deeply with audiences who felt protective of Gwen. Days later, entertainment outlets continued revisiting the footage, analyzing facial expressions and tone. Body language experts were quoted, offering interpretations that ranged from mild discomfort to clear irritation. While such analyses are inherently subjective, they contributed to the evolving narrative. Each retelling added layers of drama, transforming a brief on-air moment into a broader conversation about respect, media power, and celebrity autonomy. Gwen's past interviews resurfaced as points of comparison. Clips showing her laughing easily with other hosts and engaging openly with tough questions challenged the idea that she is overly sensitive. This history strengthened arguments that something about this particular interview was different. Fans argued that context matters, and that Gwen has earned the right to disengage when she feels misrepresented or disrespected. Meanwhile, discussions about gender and age in the entertainment industry gain renewed attention. Commentators suggested that questions Gwen allegedly faced might not be posed in the same way to male artists of similar longevity. This angle broadened the story beyond a single incident, framing it as part of a larger pattern that many women in entertainment have spoken about for years. The lack of a definitive explanation continued to fuel interest. Some believed negotiations were happening behind closed doors, while others suspected legal considerations were at play. In high-profile media situations, statements are often carefully crafted, and delays can indicate sensitive discussions. Every passing day without clarity kept the story alive, with each side holding firmly to its interpretation. Eventually, brief statements from unnamed sources suggested the situation was being overblown, though these comments did little to settle the debate. Fans countered that emotional responses don't emerge in a vacuum. Even if no insult was intended, the perception of humiliation was real for many viewers. This gap between intent and impact became a central theme in discussions surrounding the incident. Gwen's silence, when she finally broke it through subtle social media activity rather than direct commentary, was interpreted in multiple ways. A simple post celebrating creativity and self-expression was seen by supporters as a quiet reaffirmation of her values. Critics, meanwhile, argued that without addressing the incident directly, speculation would continue to overshadow her work. Media scholars pointed out that moments like this reveal the fragile balance of live television. Hosts aim to engage, challenge, and entertain, while guests expect respect and control over their narratives. When those expectations clash, even briefly, the result can ripple far beyond the studio walls. Gwen's alleged walk-off became a case study in how quickly such moments can escalate in the digital age. The conversation also raised questions about audience responsibility. Viewers often demand authenticity but react strongly when they witness discomfort. Some asked whether the pressure to analyze and judge every second contributes to the very tension that makes live interviews so risky. In Gwen's case, the audience response arguably amplified the impact of what might otherwise have been a fleeting awkward moment. As weeks passed, newer headlines slowly pushed the story out of the spotlight, but the debate lingered in fan communities. The incident was referenced whenever discussions about respectful interviewing arose. Gwen Stefani's name became shorthand for setting boundaries, regardless of the precise details behind the moment. This symbolic weight ensured the story's endurance beyond its initial news cycle. The Today Show continued its programming uninterrupted, but observant viewers noted a more cautious tone in subsequent celebrity interviews. Whether coincidental or not, the shift suggested an awareness of the scrutiny surrounding interview practices. Producers across the industry likely took note, recognizing how quickly audience trust can be questioned. Gwen, meanwhile, returned her focus to music and creative projects, letting her work speak louder than commentary. Fans rallied around her releases, interpreting their themes through the lens of recent events. Art, as always, became a space for interpretation, allowing supporters to find meaning without explicit explanations. In hindsight, the power of the moment lay not in what was definitively said, but in how it was perceived. A few minutes of live television sparked global discussion, revealing how deeply audiences connect with artists they admire. Gwen Stefani's alleged decision to walk away resonated as an assertion of self-respect, whether or not humiliation was the intent. The story also underscored the evolving relationships between celebrities and media platforms. As artists gain more direct access to their audiences, traditional shows no longer control the entire narrative. Walking off a set, intentionally or not, can redirect attention in ways no publicity strategy could fully predict. Ultimately, the truth behind the interview may remain known only to those in the studio that day. Yet the broader implications continue to echo. Respect, consent, and framing matter more than ever, especially when millions are watching and countless others are ready to analyze every frame. For Gwen Stefani, the moment became another chapter in a career defined by reinvention and resilience. Whether seen as a misunderstanding or a justified response, it reinforced her image as someone unwilling to compromise her comfort for the sake of optics. That message, intentional or not, struck a chord with many. As the media landscape moves forward, the incident serves as a reminder that even the most seasoned performers are human. Live television may thrive on spontaneity, but respect remains non-negotiable. Gwen Stefani's alleged walk-off will likely be remembered not just as a viral clip, but as a conversation starter about dignity, boundaries, and the power of choosing when to step away. As online discussions continued to evolve, many longtime fans began reflecting on Gwen Stefani's journey through the industry, pointing out how rare it is for her to be associated with public conflict. For decades, she has carefully balanced vulnerability with professionalism, often choosing grace over confrontation. This background made the alleged walk-off feel less like an impulsive reaction and more like a deliberate decision. Supporters argued that someone with her experience would not lightly abandon a live interview unless she felt genuinely uncomfortable, reinforcing the belief that the situation carried more weight than viewers initially realized. Digital creators and commentary channels soon began framing the incident as a turning point in celebrity media dynamics. Reaction videos dissected the interview frame by frame, while podcasts debated whether the line between challenging and humiliating had been crossed. Gwen's calm demeanor became a focal point, with many noting that her restraint contrasted sharply with the storm that followed online. The irony, critics noted, was that an interview meant to spotlight her achievements instead sparked a conversation that overshadowed the original promotional intent. Some media veterans cautioned against romanticizing the moment too much, reminding audiences that television production involves layers of coordination unseen by the public. Timing cues, producer instructions, and technical adjustments can sometimes create confusion that appears dramatic on screen. Even so, they acknowledged that perception matters. Once viewers believe they've witnessed discomfort or disrespect, the emotional response can become just as powerful as any confirmed fact, shaping the narrative regardless of behind-the-scenes explanations. The conversation also highlighted how female artists are often expected to remain agreeable under all circumstances. Commentators argued that if Gwen had stayed and laughed off the discomfort, she might have been praised for her composure, but leaving shifted the focus to her assertiveness. This double standard became a recurring theme, with many asking why setting boundaries is still controversial when done quietly and without disruption. Gwen's alleged exit challenged expectations without resorting to spectacle. International media outlets picked up the story, each adding their own cultural lens. In some regions, the act of walking away was framed as a dignified response to perceived disrespect, while others portrayed it as a misunderstanding amplified by social media. This global spread demonstrated how quickly narratives can shift depending on audience values. Gwen Stefani's name trended across platforms not because of a new song or fashion line, but because of a moment that symbolized broader issues in entertainment. As days turned into weeks, the lack of concrete clarification became part of the story itself. Silence from both parties allowed speculation to harden into belief for many viewers. Public relations experts noted that once an audience emotionally invests in a version of events, reversing that perception becomes difficult. In Gwen's case, the narrative of quiet resistance resonated deeply, making any later explanation potentially feel anticlimactic compared to the drama already imagined. Some fans revisited Gwen's lyrics and past interviews, searching for themes of independence and self-worth that seemed newly relevant. Lines once interpreted as personal or artistic were now seen through the lens of the interview incident. This reinterpretation showed how external events can reshape the meaning of art, allowing audiences to connect personal values to moments they perceive as defining. Meanwhile, discussions about interview ethics gained traction among journalists and broadcasters. Questions emerged about consent, framing, and the responsibility of hosts to create respectful dialogue rather than viral tension. Gwen's alleged experience became an example cited in media training conversations, illustrating how even subtle shifts in tone can dramatically alter a guest's comfort level and public reaction. Critics of the walk-off narrative continued to push back, arguing that the story relied too heavily on assumptions. They emphasized the importance of distinguishing between verified facts and emotional interpretation. Still, even these voices acknowledged that the strong reaction revealed something meaningful about audience expectations. Viewers increasingly demand empathy and respect, not just entertainment, from media interactions. Gwen's continued focus on her creative work subtly redirected attention back to her artistry. By not engaging directly with the controversy, she allowed the moment to exist without defining her. Fans praised this approach, seeing it as consistent with her long-standing ability to move forward without dwelling publicly on conflict. The absence of public confrontation arguably preserved her image while leaving space for interpretation. Over time, The incident became less about the single interview and more about what it represented. It symbolized the shift where artists are no longer expected to endure discomfort for exposure. With social media offering direct access to fans, traditional platforms hold less unilateral power. Gwen's alleged decision to leave underscored this changing balance, reminding audiences that visibility no longer requires silent compliance. Educational discussions even emerged around the psychology of live performance. Experts explained how pressure, unpredictability, and perceived disrespect can trigger a need to regain control. Walking away, they noted, can be a grounding response rather than an emotional outburst. This perspective reframed the incident as a human reaction rather than a celebrity scandal. As newer stories entered the news cycle, Gwen Stefani's interview moment remained a reference point. It was cited whenever discussions arose about uncomfortable celebrity interviews or media missteps. The longevity of the conversation proved that audiences are increasingly attentive not just to what is said, but how it is said and how guests are treated in real time. In fan spaces, the story gradually transformed into a lesson rather than a controversy. Many expressed appreciation for Gwen's perceived example of self-respect, sharing personal experiences where they wished they had walked away from uncomfortable situations. This emotional connection extended the life of the narrative far beyond entertainment gossip. In the end, whether the interview was truly humiliating or simply misinterpreted may never be fully resolved. What remains clear is the impact of the moment. Gwen Stefani's alleged walk-off became a symbol of choice, dignity, and the evolving power dynamics between media and artists. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, the conversation it sparked continued, reminding everyone that sometimes the strongest statement is knowing when to step away. As time went on, analysts began comparing this moment to other high-profile interview exits in television history, noting how differently Gwen Stefani's situation unfolded. There was no visible confrontation, no raised voices, and no dramatic exchange captured on camera. Instead, the power of the moment came from its quiet nature. This subtlety made it more relatable to everyday viewers, many of whom recognize that discomfort doesn't always announce itself loudly. The calmness of her alleged exit allowed people to project their own experiences onto the moment, strengthening its emotional resonance. Marketing experts also weighed in, suggesting that unintended controversy can sometimes reshape a public image in unexpected ways. In Gwen's case, the narrative reinforced her reputation as someone who values authenticity over forced politeness. Rather than harming her brand, the incident arguably humanized her, making her appear more grounded and self-aware. Fans expressed admiration for her ability to prioritize personal boundaries, even in a high-pressure environment where appearances are often valued above well-being. The role of social media algorithms became another point of discussion. Short clips, stripped of context, traveled faster and farther than full interview segments ever could. Each repost added dramatic captions and speculative commentary, subtly altering how the moment was perceived. Gwen's brief on-air decision, whatever its original cause, was transformed into a viral storyline shaped largely by audience interpretation rather than verified information. Journalists reflected on how modern audiences increasingly distrust polished explanations. Even if an official statement had clarified the situation immediately, many viewers might have dismissed it as damage control. This skepticism highlighted a broader cultural shift, where raw moments are often valued more than official narratives. Gwen's silence, intentional or not, aligned with this shift, allowing the audience to feel they were witnessing something genuine. In interviews months later, unrelated questions about professionalism and self-care were often interpreted through the lens of the incident. Gwen's thoughtful responses about creativity, balance, and listening to oneself took on new significance. Fans read between the lines, believing she was subtly reaffirming the importance of knowing one's limits without explicitly revisiting the controversy. Television producers reportedly began reassessing how they prepare for celebrity interviews. While challenging questions remain part of engaging content, there was renewed awareness of tone and delivery. Gwen Stefani's alleged walk-off served as a reminder that respect cannot be assumed simply because a guest agrees to appear. The responsibility to maintain a safe, respectful space remains ongoing throughout the broadcast. Academics studying media culture noted how this moment illustrated the collapse of clear boundaries between entertainment and personal ethics. A single interview became a lens through which audiences examined power, respect, and autonomy. Gwen's experience, real or perceived, was no longer just about celebrity culture but about broader social expectations in public discourse. Fans continued to defend Gwen passionately, often pushing back against narratives that framed her as overly sensitive. They highlighted her long history of openness and collaboration, arguing that resilience does not mean tolerating discomfort indefinitely. This defense further cemented the idea that walking away can be an act of strength rather than weakness. Over time, the incident began appearing in think pieces rather than gossip columns. Writers explored how moments like these reveal the emotional labor expected of public figures. Gwen Stefani's name became associated with a larger conversation about emotional boundaries in the spotlight, giving the story a depth that outlasted its initial shock value. The memory of the interview also lingered among viewers of morning television, subtly changing expectations. Audiences became more attentive to how hosts phrase questions and how guests respond. Small shifts in body language or tone now carried greater significance, as viewers had been reminded how quickly discomfort can surface on live TV. Gwen's fans often noted that she never attempted to capitalize on the moment through interviews or tell-all statements. This restraint contrasted sharply with the media frenzy surrounding it. By choosing not to exploit the controversy, she allowed it to fade naturally, reinforcing her image as someone focused on long-term integrity rather than short-term attention. The incident also influenced how emerging artists viewed media appearances. Younger performers cited the story as an example of prioritizing mental and emotional comfort. Gwen Stefani, unintentionally, became a reference point for a new generation navigating an industry that still struggles to balance access with respect. As years pass, the details of what exactly happened on that set may blur, but the symbolism will likely remain. Gwen's alleged walk-off is remembered less as a scandal and more as a moment that challenged assumptions about compliance and politeness. It stands as a quiet reminder that even in carefully controlled environments, personal agency still matters. Cultural commentators often conclude that the lasting impact of the incident lies in its ambiguity. Without definitive answers, the story invites reflection rather than resolution. Viewers are left to consider how they interpret discomfort, respect, and choice, using Gwen Stefani's experience as a mirror for their own values. In the end, the legacy of the moment extends beyond one interview or one show. It highlights a growing demand for empathy in media spaces and respect for personal boundaries, regardless of fame. Gwen Stefani's alleged decision to walk away continues to echo as a powerful, understated statement in an industry built on constant visibility, proving that sometimes the most meaningful action is choosing when not to stay.